2.8 million years ago, the world was not kind to the weak. Ice ruled the land. Fire was unreliable, yet to humans survive not by strength, but by something far more dangerous. This was the dawn of a new era. The Pleistocene, a great cold descended upon the earth, wrapping continents in vast sheets of ice. Temperatures plummeted to levels that could kill in minutes. The wind was a relentless predator, howling through frozen forests and across endless snowfields. For the earliest members of our human family, there were no permanent shelters, no fortresses to hide behind. Every rustle in the barren trees, every shadow on the snow, could signal a hungry saber-toothed cat or a giant short-faced bear. The world was a landscape of frozen peril. In this unforgiving wilderness, we find them. Two early humans. These were not the heroic hunters of later legends. They were fragile, exposed. They had no advanced stone tools, no warm animal hide clothing, and most critically, no consistent control over fire. These were not supermen. They were simply and vulnerably human. Their thin skin was no match for the biting cold. Their hands were not yet skilled enough to reliably create the spark that could mean the difference between life and death. They were at the absolute mercy of the elements, armed with little more than their wits and each other. We often imagine our ancestors huddled around a roaring fire, the flames keeping the darkness and the beasts at bay. But the reality of this period was far harsher. Creating fire was an exhausting, often futile task. Even if they succeeded, a sudden blizzard or a fierce gust of wind could extinguish their precious flame in an instant, leaving them once again in the freezing dark. Ashes buried under fresh snow were a common, heartbreaking sight. Fire was a fleeting luxury, not a dependable ally. It was a promise of warmth that was too often broken. In this world of ice, fire was not enough. The real enemy wasn't the predators lurking in the shadows. It was the cold itself, an insidious, silent killer. It didn't strike with claws or fangs. It seeped into the bones, slowly, patiently. First came the numbness of frostbite, turning fingers and toes black and useless. Then, the creeping lethargy of hypothermia, a deceptive warmth that lured its victims into a final, fatal sleep. Every shiva was a desperate battle for life, a frantic burning of precious energy that was impossible to replace. The cold did not kill quickly. It waited, it drained you, weakened you, and then it claimed you. So how did they survive when their greatest supposed tool, fire, failed them? Their first strategy was beautifully simple. Body heat. In the suffocating cold of a makeshift den or a shallow cave, they huddled together, pressing their bodies close. It was a silent agreement, an instinctual act of mutual preservation. The warmth from one body flowed to the other, a small but vital shield against the encroaching frost. This shared heat was their first furnace, a living flame that could not be blown out by the wind. It was the simple, profound power of two lives, refusing to be extinguished by the cold. Their next strategy was to work with nature, not against it. They did not build shelters, they found them. A deep cave, a protective rock overhang, or a dense thicket of frozen vegetation could offer a crucial break from the relentless wind. They learned to read the landscape, to see potential refuge where others might only see desolate rock and ice. These natural sanctuaries became their temporary homes, places to rest and recover, to gather their strength before venturing back into the frozen world. Their survival depended not on construction, but on observation and adaptation. They were becoming one with their harsh environment. But they couldn't stay hidden forever. The cold demanded movement. To remain still for too long was to invite a frozen death, so they walked. They walked against the biting snow, their bodies generating precious heat with every step. This constant motion was not just about finding food or new shelter. It was a fundamental survival tactic. It was a way to keep the blood flowing, to fight off the creeping numbness. Every footstep was a tiny victory against the ice, a declaration that they were still alive, still fighting. They were nomads not by choice, but by necessity, forever moving to outrun the cold that was always at their heels. Finding food in this frozen world was a monumental challenge. Large game was too dangerous and difficult to hunt with their primitive tools. Survival depended on what others left behind. They were scavengers, following in the footsteps of larger, more successful predators. They learned to crack open bones left at a kill site to get at the nutrient-rich marrow inside. They would find frozen carcasses, chipping away at the icy meat. It was a grim, desperate existence, living off the scraps of a brutal world. But it provided the energy they needed to keep moving, to keep shivering, to keep living for one more day. Alone they would freeze. Alone they would starve. Alone they would have been just another casualty of the Ice Age. But together, they endured. The bond between them was their most powerful tool, more vital than any sharpened stone. It was a bond of cooperation, of trust, of a shared will to live. One could watch for predators, while the other searched for food. They could share the warmth of their bodies, the meager scraps of a meal, the silent burden of fear. This emotional connection, this unspoken partnership, was the invisible thread that held their fragile existence together against the forces trying to tear it apart. This desperate struggle for survival changed our species forever. This was not just a story of two individuals making it through a harsh winter. This was a turning point in human evolution. The need to cooperate, to rely on one another, forged the social bonds that would come to define humanity. Our brains grew larger, not just to make better tools, but to navigate increasingly complex social relationships. This was not the victory of fire, it was the victory of togetherness. It cemented the idea that our greatest strength was not in our individual might, but in our ability to stand as one. 2.8 million years ago, humanity did not survive because it was strong. It survived because it learned something. No ice could freeze the power of staying together. Before tools, before fire, there was survival.